The rain in Seoul doesn't wash away the neon, it only makes the colors bleed. Kangdi stood under a black silk umbrella, his tailored white shirt crisp against the humid air, his neck tattoos glowing faintly under the streetlights. He wasn't there for a deal, he was there because of a leak. For 3 months, his logistics empire had been bleeding efficiency, losing paths to a ghost. He tracked the glitch to a dumpster behind a third-rate noodle shop. There sat Emily. She wasn't begging. She wasn't crying. She was sitting on a milk crate, eating a carton of cold rice with one hand and sketching complex Fourier transform equations into the dirt with a stick in the other. Kangdi looked at the dirt, then at her. He didn't see a beggar. He saw the only person in the city smart enough to destroy him. "Those variables are off," Kangdi said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. His 3 enforcers fanned out, their black suits swallowing the light. Emily didn't jump. She didn't even look up. She simply wiped her mouth, tossed the stick aside, and said, "The variables are fine. Your courier routes are just predictable. If you're going to kill me for fixing your mess, do it before the rice gets any colder." Kangdi felt a spark of something he hadn't felt in years, genuine curiosity. This was an Afro-Korean woman the world had clearly tried to erase, yet she was playing chess with his entire multi-million-dollar operation from a back alley. "I'm not going to kill you," he whispered, stepping into the mud, heedless of his expensive shoes. "I'm going to give you a desk, and if you're as good as this dirt says you are, I might just give you the city." "Hello, fam, don't skip yet. Where are you watching from? Kindly drop it in the comments so I can send a special regards to you. And also, hit the subscribe button to subscribe to this channel." The air in the back of the Silver Dragon restaurant smelled of old grease and damp cardboard, but to Kangdi, it suddenly smelled like opportunity. He watched Emily, Zenzal to those who knew her past, as she stood up. She was tall, her dreadlocks pulled back with a piece of discarded wire, her clothes oversized and frayed. Yet she held herself with a regal, icy detachment that made his seasoned enforcers shift uncomfortably. "You've been monitoring my shipments," Kangdi stated. It wasn't a question. "I've been monitoring the noise," Emily replied, dusting off her pants. "Your trucks move in patterns that mimic the local bus heartbeats. It's clever, but it creates a lag at the intersection of Mapogu. I didn't mean to interfere. I just needed to see if the math held up." Kangdi motioned to his lead enforcer, who stepped forward with a heavy, steel-bound briefcase. Instead of a weapon, he produced a tablet. Kangdi handed it to her. "This is the live feed of our Busan port operations. There is a bottleneck we can't find. Solve it and you get a hot meal and a bed. Fail and you go back to your dirt." Emily took the tablet with steady fingers. Her eyes, a sharp and piercing mahogany, scanned the data strings. For the next 10 minutes, the only sound was the rain hitting the bins and the distant hum of the city. The men stood like statues. Kangdi watched her face, not for beauty, though she possessed a rugged, striking elegance, but for the movement of her mind. "The bottleneck isn't at the port," she said suddenly, handing the tablet back. "It's a digital ghost. Someone has injected a delay into your waystation software. Every truck is being delayed by exactly 42 seconds. It looks like a system lag, but over 1,000 trucks, you're losing 2 days of productivity a month. You don't need a mechanic, Kangdi. You need a ghost hunter." Kangdi took the tablet. He signaled his men. "Get the car, and someone buy this restaurant. I don't want anyone else knowing she sat here." As they walked toward the sleek black sedan, Emily stopped. "I don't do charity, and I don't do savior arcs. If I work for you, I want my own server, my own floor, and the names of the board members at the Seoul Institute of Technology." Kangdi smiled, a thin, predatory line. "You want revenge, I want efficiency. It seems we have a contract." The penthouse of the Kangdi Heights was a fortress of glass and chrome. For Emily, it was a far cry from the cardboard shelters of the last 2 years. But as she stood in the center of the sprawling living area, she didn't look at the silk rugs or the view of the Han River. She looked at the security cameras. "There are 12, she said, without turning around as Kangdi entered. 3 have blind spots near the ventilation ducts. You should fix that." Kangdi laughed softly, shedding his coat. "Most people would be looking at the wine cellar or the closet full of designer clothes I had delivered for you. You're looking for a way out." "I'm looking for the perimeter," she countered. She turned to face him. She was now dressed in a simple, high-quality black tracksuit. "Why me? You have the money to hire the best cybersecurity firms in the world." "Firms have boards. Firms have loyalties to the law. Firms are slow," Kangdi said, pouring 2 glasses of sparkling water. He didn't offer her alcohol. He sensed she needed her mind sharp. "You are a ghost. You don't exist on any census. You were the top of your class at the institute until your professor, Dr. Han, stole your thesis on predictive algorithms and had you blacklisted. You didn't fall into the cracks, Emily. You were pushed." The mention of Han made Emily's jaw tighten. The air in the room grew heavy. "He didn't just steal my work. He destroyed my visa status. He made sure no one would hire an unstable foreigner." "I don't care about your visa," Kangdi said, stepping closer. "In my world, the only citizenship that matters is loyalty. My empire is under attack by a clean corporate entity called Neosol Logistics. They are using your stolen algorithms to squeeze my roots. I want you to take back what is yours, and in doing so, break them for me." Emily looked at the workstations set up in the corner, 4 monitors, a liquid-cooled tower, and an encrypted satellite uplink. It was a weapon. "If I do this," she said, "I do it my way, no unnecessary blood. We don't hit them with bats, we hit them with bankruptcy." "A peaceful war," Kangdi mused. "How novel, start tonight." The 3rd chapter of their association began not with a bang, but with a click. Emily sat at the monitors, her fingers flying across the mechanical keyboard like a concert pianist. Kangdi sat behind her, watching the screens. He was a man of action, used to solving problems with a heavy hand, but watching Emily work was like watching a master strategist at a war table. "They're using a version of my swarm logic code," she whispered, her eyes reflecting the green and white lines of data. "Dr. Han sold it to Neosol. They think they're invisible, because they've masked the IP addresses through a series of shell companies in the Caymans." "Can you get in?" Kangdi asked. "I'm already in," she said with a faint, grim smile. "I'm not just in their system, I'm in their payroll. Look." She opened a folder. Kangdi's eyes widened. She had accessed the private records of every executive at Neosol, but she wasn't looking for bank accounts. She was looking for their vulnerabilities. "Tomorrow morning," Emily explained, "the CEO of Neosol will wake up to find that his personal collection of rare art has been legally flagged as stolen property. The CFO will find that his secret offshore account has been emptied and donated to an Afro-Korean youth center. And their logistics software. It's going to start routing their ships to the wrong ports, all within the legal parameters of system errors." Suddenly, an alarm blared on the screen. A red box pulsed in the center of the monitor. "They have a countermeasure," Emily hissed. "Someone is tracing me back. They're fast." "How fast?" Kangdi asked, reaching for his phone to alert his security team. "They'll have our physical location in 3 minutes," she said, her sweat beading on her forehead. "Kangdi, this isn't just a corporate rival. This is a state-level encryption. Dr. Han didn't just sell my work, he sold it to the National Intelligence Service's rogue faction." Kangdi's expression went stone cold. He realized this wasn't just a business rivalry anymore. It was a hunt. He placed a hand on Emily's shoulder, a rare moment of physical contact. "Finish the upload. I'll handle the front door." The chapter ends with the sound of black SUVs screeching to a halt outside the building, and the elevator lights beginning to climb. Emily's progress bar sits at 88%. The elevator display climbed steadily. 40-41-42. In the high-tech sanctuary of the penthouse, the silence was punctuated only by the rhythmic clicking of Emily's keyboard. 92%, Emily whispered, her voice tight. Kangdi, if they breach the firewall before the upload completes, they'll lock the data. I'll lose the proof against Han forever. Kangdi didn't look back. He stood by the heavy mahogany doors of the suite, checking the slide of his silver-plated handgun. You focus on the numbers. I'll focus on the geometry of the room. He signaled to his 3 enforcers. They moved with practiced precision, overturning a heavy marble table to create a tactical barricade. The elevator chimed. The doors didn't just open, they were blown off their hinges by a controlled thermite charge. Smoke flooded the foyer. Men in gray tactical gear, not the black suits of the Mafia, but the sterile, unmarked uniforms of private mercenaries, rushed in. These weren't street thugs, they were professionals. The room erupted. Kangdi moved like a shadow, his movements a brutal dance of efficiency. He didn't fire wildly. Every shot was a calculated deterrent. Behind him, Emily felt the floor vibrate from the percussion of the struggle. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she forced her eyes to stay locked on the progress bar. 96%, 97%. A mercenary broke through the line, lunging toward the workstation with a combat knife. Emily didn't scream. She grabbed a heavy glass award from the desk, an irony of Kangdi's Businessman of the Year trophy, and swung it with all the suppressed rage of 2 years on the streets. It connected with the man's temple just as Kangdi's arm wrapped around the attacker's throat, pulling him back. Done, Emily shouted. As the final bite uploaded, the lights in the entire building flickered and died. Emily had triggered a local EMP, a digital kill switch she'd hidden in the code. The mercenaries' night vision goggles and communication arrays hissed into static. In the sudden, heavy darkness, Kangdi's voice came from the shadows, calm and terrifying. My house, my rules. When the emergency backup lights kicked in, the mercenaries were gone, retreated into the night, leaving only the wreckage of the foyer. Kangdi stood over the shattered marble, his white shirt stained with gray dust. He looked at Emily. She wasn't shaking. She was already typing, securing the next layer of their defense. The aftermath was quiet. The penthouse was being cleaned by a silent sanitation crew that arrived at 3:00 a.m. Kangdi and Emily sat on the balcony, the cold soul wind biting at them. You hit that man quite hard, Kangdi remarked, handing her a steaming cup of tea. He was touching my server, Emily replied, her voice steady but her hands finally beginning to tremor. Kangdi noticed. He reached out not to touch her hand, but to slide a small velvet box across the table. Inside was a necklace, a simple platinum chain with a pendant of an abacus. A token, he said, not for saving me, but for being the first person to actually follow my instructions under fire. Is that what your tattoos are? Emily asked, pointing to the intricate ink snaking up his neck. Instructions. Kangdi pulled back his sleeve, revealing the map of his life. This one, he pointed to a koi fish swimming upstream, is from when I was a debt collector in Busan. This one, he moved to a complex geometric pattern on his forearm, is the layout of the prison where I realized that violence without intelligence is just noise. He looked at her, his eyes softening. I see your scars too, Emily. Not the ones on your skin, but the way you look at a room. You're always looking for the exit because you've been taught that the world will always try to take what's yours. It has, she said softly. My research, my home, my identity. I'm a ghost in my own skin. Not anymore, Kangdi promised. Tonight, you didn't just protect data. You protected our future. I've lived my life as a predator. But you make me want to be an architect. For the first time, the Mafia boss and the street scholar didn't see an asset or a protector. They saw a mirror. By the end of the week, the tide had turned. Emily had moved from defense to a crushing offense. She didn't use guns. She used the very swarm logic that Dr. Han had stolen. She sat in the center of a newly built war room in the basement of one of Kangdi's legitimate shipping warehouses. Around her, a dozen of the city's most talented and previously overlooked coders, all handpicked by Emily from the fringes of society, worked in silence. Dr. Han is giving a keynote speech tonight at the Global Logistics Summit, Emily announced, her voice echoing through the headsets. He's going to present his new AI-driven shipping manifesto. He thinks he's reaching the pinnacle of his career. Kangdi stood behind her, his hand resting on the back of her chair. And what are we giving him? Truth, Emily said. As Dr. Han stood on the stage, in front of 1,000 dignitaries and cameras. The massive screen behind him didn't show his PowerPoint. It began to play a recording, a hidden file Emily had recovered from the Institute's deleted servers. It was a video of Han threatening Emily, laughing as he told her that a foreigner from the streets would never be believed over a man of stature. Then the data hit. Emily released the full, unedited source code to the public. It was watermarked with her digital signature in every line. The NeoSoul stock price plummeted in real time on the ticker below the stage. Security rushed the stage, but the mercenaries from the penthouse were nowhere to be found. Instead, the real police arrived, led by an anonymous tip containing the bank records of the bribes Han had used to blacklist Emily. In the war room, Emily watched the man who destroyed her life being led away in handcuffs. She expected to feel a rush of vengeance. Instead, she felt a profound sense of emptiness until she felt Kangdi's hand tighten slightly on her shoulder. "The war is over," he said. "No," Emily replied, looking up at him. "The war is over. The work is just beginning. We have a company to rebuild, a legitimate one." The chapter ends with them walking out of the warehouse, not as a boss and a subordinate, but as partners, as the morning sun finally broke through the Seoul smog. The aftermath of Dr. Han's downfall created a vacuum that the media called the Seoul tech earthquake. While the public focused on the fallen professor, the real power shift was happening in the quiet boardrooms of Kangdi's headquarters. Emily was no longer the woman in the alley. She was the most sought-after mind in the industry. One afternoon, a representative from a prestigious European university arrived at the office. He offered Emily a full professorship, a clean record, and a path back to the light. It was everything she had dreamed of when she first arrived in Korea. Kangdi watched from the glass balcony as the representative spoke to her. He didn't intervene. He didn't threaten. For the first time in his life, he felt the fear of losing something that couldn't be replaced by force. He had spent his life taking what he wanted, but he knew he couldn't take Emily's loyalty. It had to be given. Later that evening, the office was empty. The city lights twinkled like a circuit board below them. "They offered me a way out," Emily said, leaning against the glass. "I know," Kangdi replied, his back to her as he studied a map of their new, legal shipping routes. "It's what you deserve, a name that isn't tied to a man with tattoos on his neck." Emily walked over and turned the map over, revealing the blank white side of the paper. "That life is a ghost story, Kangdi. I don't want to teach math to children who have never been hungry. I want to build something that changes the world with someone who knows what it's like to be broken." She reached out and traced the lines of the tattoo on his hand. "The European University wants my past. You want my future. I choose the future." The legitimate transition wasn't going to be easy. The old guard of the criminal underworld, the men who had profited from Kangdi's old ways, viewed his pivot to legal tech as a betrayal. Led by a ruthless rival named Gyro, the syndicates formed an unholy alliance to reclaim the territory. They didn't attack with guns this time. They targeted the Dragonfly system, the ethical logistics AI Emily had built to manage the city's food and medical supply chains. If they could crash the system, the city would fall into chaos, and the government would be forced to seize Kangdee's assets. The attack came at midnight. A massive DDoS distributed denial of service attack flooded their servers, coupled with a physical breach at the main data center. "They're hitting the cooling systems," Emily shouted over the alarms. "If the servers overheat, the AI will melt itself to protect the data." Kangdee didn't hesitate. "I'll hold the physical site. You stay in the digital trenches. Emily, if the building goes, you leave. Don't be a hero for hardware." "I'm not doing it for the hardware," she snapped, her fingers already flying across the backup terminal. As Kangdee descended into the data center's basement, he was met by Gyro's elite hit squad. It was a brutal, close-quarters struggle in the dark, cooled by the mist of leaking liquid nitrogen. Kangdee fought with the desperation of a man who finally had a home to protect. Upstairs, Emily realized the only way to stop the hack was to bait the attackers. She opened a hole in her own firewall, inviting the virus in. As it entered, she trapped it in a recursive loop, a mathematical infinite hallway she had designed based on her old theories. The rivals' computers across the city began to smoke and burst into flames. The screen flashed, "Threat neutralized." Below, Kangdee stood over the defeated Gyro. He didn't pull the trigger. Instead, he handed the man a phone. "The police are outside, and your bank accounts are empty. Emily redirected your funds to the city's orphanage funds 10 minutes ago. You're not a boss anymore, Gyro. You're a liability." 5 years later, the sun rose over a different soul. The Kangzenza Logistics Tower stood as a beacon of the city's skyline, the first carbon-neutral, AI-driven hub in Asia. On the top floor, the atmosphere wasn't one of tension, but of warmth. A toddler with curly dark hair and his father's sharp eyes chased a robotic vacuum across the plush carpet. Nearby, a younger child sat in a high chair, laughing as Emily, now the CEO and a globally recognized innovator, tried to feed her while simultaneously checking a holographic projection of the morning's global trade reports. Kangdee walked into the room, no longer wearing the crisp white shirt of a street boss, but a relaxed linen suit. His tattoos were still there, a part of his history, but they were no longer a warning. He stopped behind Emily, kissing the top of her head. "The port in Busan just reported record efficiency," he whispered, "and the school we built in Mapogu has its first graduating class today." Emily leaned back into him, looking at their children. "Do you remember that night behind the restaurant? The cold rice?" Kangdee smiled, looking at the woman who had transformed his empire of shadows into a legacy of light. "I remember thinking you were the most dangerous person I'd ever met." "I was," Emily said, taking his hand. "But only because I had nothing to lose. Now I have everything." The story ends with a wide shot of the family standing together on the balcony. The camera pans out to show the city they helped rebuild, thriving under a system built not on fear, but on the brilliance of a woman the world almost forgot, and a man who was brave enough to listen. Success achieved, a legacy of brilliance. The end. If you love this story, kindly hit the subscribe button to subscribe to this channel.